In 30 seconds, you will be witness to one of the greatest online events in the history of, well, online events. Descript proudly brings to you a topic that you deeply care about and whose name is the title of this online event. I'm Don. I am not your host. I am an overdub stock voice included for free with Descript. So, now, let's meet someone who actually works here.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar. I am thrilled to be talking about shedding bad podcasting habits and building better ones. My name is Harmony Jarudek, and I'm with the Descript team. Today, we're going to be joined by Kevin from the Descript team. He's one of our product specialists, and Justin Jackson, co-founder of Transistor and expert podcaster. We're going to be talking about podcast idea generation, improving your workflow, and increasing efficiency. We're going to talk about how to use Descript and Transistor together. And you may be asking, you're hearing this word Descript, what is it? It's a collaborative audio and video editor that essentially works like a Google Doc. One of the things I love about the tool is that it's one app that allows you to edit your audio and video. There's a transcription element, there's a built-in screen recorder, there's this thing called overdub that allows you to create your own synthetic voice. And we're so excited to share with you how to use it along with Transistor today. So I would like to invite Kevin onto the stage, Descript product specialist, and Justin Jackson. Welcome.
Hey, Harmony.
Hey.
Hey.
Hey, Justin. How's it going?
Hey, good. Good to be here.
Thanks for being here.
Excellent.
Thanks for the intro too. That was great. That gave me enough time to drink some coffee and drink some water. I feel like
Amazing.
I'm hydrated.
Before I turn it over to you guys, I just want to say to everyone watching today, please join in the chat. Tell us where you're joining from and ask us questions. We'll be throwing some of the questions onto the screen as Kevin and Justin dig in. So please introduce yourself there. And I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
Thanks, Harmony.
Perfect.
Cool, man. Hey, thanks for joining us. This is great to be able to connect and chat, learn more about you. I know there's a lot of folks that are interested in the same. So
no, this is great because it's the new year, and everyone's thinking about their show or starting a show. So it's a good time to get the gears going. See if we can maybe inspire some people to start podcasting or to keep podcasting if they already have a show.
That's the plan. That's the plan. I love it. Can you tell me, tell everybody here more about what you do? How did you get to where you are now on this live stream? Who is Justin Jackson?
I mean, for the purpose of this, I'm the co-founder of Transistor.fm. We're a small podcast hosting company, started in 2018. I co-founded it with John Buddha. And him and I met in 2014 at XOXO in Portland. And the reason we started talking was because I was doing a podcast called Product People that I started in 2012. And he was also building tools for podcasters. So he gave me access to some of his tools. And then 4 years after we met, we started Transistor. And then pretty quick after, it became our full-time gig. And now we have 4 people working on Transistor full-time. And, oh man, probably 20,000 podcasts on the platform, something like that. So that's the short version, I guess.
Amazing. And what was your early start? Like, what was the early Justin Jackson entry into audio? Like, what were the early moments that you thought, like, audio's for me? This is something that I want to be involved in, especially podcasting. But yeah.
Well, I mean, growing up, I grew up in Alberta, and in Alberta, Canada, talk radio is huge. And I remember driving with my dad in his pickup truck, and we were just always listening to CBC, which is kind of our NPR. And I really liked talk radio, maybe because it was what I did with my dad, but I kept listening to it even in high school. And I have memories of driving my car by myself and like turning off the radio and pretending to be the host, like pretending to be like, oh, what question would I ask, and kind of acting it out. And so I think I was always like into it. I always wanted to be in, do something in audio. And then years later, and actually I also, my parents knew somebody who bought a radio station who's quite wealthy. And I remember as probably a 17-year-old, after I heard the news, speaking to him at one point, going, "Man, that's so cool! You bought a radio station. Like, how would a guy like me get into radio?" And he just said, "It's pretty hard." He basically discouraged me from doing it.
Oh, man.
And even like the cost of like broadcasting yourself back then in 1997 is high. It was impossible. You couldn't pay for a radio station. It'd just be too expensive. So fast forward to 2012, my friend Kyle Fox asked me if I wanted to start a podcast, and I'd been listening to different tech shows, and at that point it was very accessible. I think we started with just like earbuds, and then eventually bought a Blue Yeti mic, like a lot of people do, and then just kept going from there. But even then, like total cost that I've invested in podcasting, like equipment and stuff, it's still incredibly affordable. Like the idea that you could buy a $70 microphone, hook it up to your computer, and then, pay a little bit for podcast hosting, and you're basically your own radio station. That like fulfills a lifelong like dream I've had since high school, that you can even do that. That's incredible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm really pumped on the idea of podcasting and audio, and the fact that just anybody can do it, wherever you are in the world. It's incredibly accessible.
Certainly. I mean, what kind of advice are you giving to folks that are just getting started along those lines? Obviously, in 2022, there's just a lower threshold to jumping in. What kind of advice are you giving to new folks, to people that are maybe in the young Justin phase of thinking about making their start?
Yeah. Well, before we get into habits, maybe the first habit is a mindset habit, which is, I don't want to be crass, but there's sometimes people see the number of podcasts and they get discouraged. Like there's 1.5 million podcasts or something like that. And the truth is, and again, not to be crass, but the truth is most podcasts still aren't that good. And if that's true, anybody getting into it should know that, yes, there's a lot out there, but there's still an incredible opportunity to produce something that is good, something that's compelling, something that people actually want to wake up and listen to. So yeah, anybody can hit record, and the tools are available to everybody. That's amazing. That's the democratization part. But then your job as a podcaster is to create something that is compelling, to create something that people want to listen to. Mm-hmm. And so I would say the first habit would be research, figure out who you're going to be speaking to and what are they into? What kinds of shows do they listen to already? How much room do they have in their, audio consumption? And what would it take for them to switch to something else? Mm-hmm. And you can ask these questions. There's on Reddit, there's a subreddit called r/podcasts. There's communities of podcasts for podcast fans like Podchaser and Podyssey. And you can find people who listen to shows, and you can find people who listen to shows that you might want to create, like in that genre, and then reach out to them, reach out to them on Twitter or Instagram, DM them, ask questions publicly, ask questions in coffee shops. I've gotten in the habit of doing this. You hear somebody talking about podcasts and say, hey, just curious, like, why did you start listening to that show? How did you hear about it? What kind of show do you think you would listen to next? What would cause you to switch from something you're listening right now to something else? And the insights you're going to get from that are going to help you form a picture of the type of show you should be creating. And then it also has to align with something you're excited about, something that you're passionate about, and something that, again, you can be compelling, that you can be a compelling host of. The truth is that podcasting isn't for everybody. Even though the tools are available for everybody, podcasting is for people that can be good on the microphone. And that takes some practice, that takes some trial and error, and it takes some passion. And if you're just kind of, if you're not fully bought into that, it will be hard to get listeners. But if you are committed to creating something interesting and good, then then start following those habits of research is number one. Practice. Of course, the first show you put out is not going to be perfect. It takes lots of time. Even what I was doing in the car when I was in high school, I was practicing. What does it take to be a good host? Listen to your favorite radio host. Listen to Howard Stern. Listen to Terry Gross. Listen to people that are good at what they do, and pick up on that. When do they pause? How do they ask questions? What kind of style or tone do you like? What kind of style and tone is compelling to you as a listener? What turns you off? What makes you fast forward? What makes you stop listening? So practice and keep engaging with your audience. Once you find something that works, be in connection with your audience. And some people say it's hard to get feedback. Like, that's the number one thing. Like, oh, audio, I never get any feedback. There's no like centralized comments like YouTube. And the truth is, you'll know when you've truly become compelling and also connected with an audience. You'll know because they will find you. And one way to encourage that is to give them prompts. So one of my favorite prompts is to give a shout out to the people listening who are doing the dishes, like, hey, everybody, if you're out there doing the dishes right now, I know you're there. Just tweet me at MIJustin, like that, giving people an opportunity to, hey, are you walking the dog right now? If you are walking the dog right now, could you just stop and just like shoot me an email at this address or shoot me a tweet? I just want to know that somebody's out there listening, and giving people those fun opportunities to engage with you and those prompts to engage with you, you'll probably see more responses, more engagement if you give them. Of course, this is all on the bedrock of being compelling and interesting and actually, finding an audience, all of which are not easy. But once you do that, getting feedback is not as hard as you might think.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I can imagine myself right now washing the pan after cooking dinner, hearing Justin's voice in my head.
and maybe if we have time, I can show people a few tools they can use to do that research. Should I do that right now?
Sure, that sounds great. While you're pulling that up, I want to maybe pepper in some different times too to talk about that audience development and research. I'd love to hear some experiences you had developing the audience for your newsletter, for your podcast, what that experience was like, and what things stuck out to you as really useful along the way.
Yeah, well, that actually that reminds me of another thing I would recommend if you're just getting started is the time before you launch is actually the most potent. And I would have something like this. This is just a landing page builder, but have a a coming soon page for your podcast where people can sign up. They can get a teaser episode right away, publish the teaser right away. Also, people often hold back and they don't publish their first episode until it's ready to go live. No, publish a teaser, a little 30-second, 1 minute, 2 minute trailer for your show. Submit it to Apple Podcasts, submit it to Spotify, start getting subscribers in those platforms, and also have an email waiting list. Email waiting list is awesome because right away you can automatically reply to people and say, hey, what made you sign up today? What's going on in your life that brought you here to this show? What was it about the trailer that made you want to hear more? And now you've got a relationship, and now you're getting feedback right away, right? So have a coming soon page like this with your trailer. Give people the opportunity to subscribe way before you actually launch the show, and get people to sign up by email, and tell people about yourselves. Like, who are you? Why should they be listening to you? You're going to, a lot of podcasting is about who you are as the host. So definitely do that first. In terms of research, this is a trick that the SparkToro team just showed me. You can have, so in this case, like I already have an audience on Twitter. And so I might want to see what kinds of things is my audience interested in. Like what kinds of topics could I talk about with the audience I've already built? And we've definitely seen this in podcasting. And some people say this is a negative, like, Conan O'Brien has a big audience, but that's not fair. He already had an audience before podcasting. But you can build an audience outside of podcasting and bring it to your show. And there's nothing wrong with that. I started with blogging and a newsletter and on Twitter, and that really helped once I did launch a show. So here on SparkToro, we can see they're already, what are the top words and bios? Founder, software, web, designer. This is already giving me an idea of the types of things I might want to talk about. Who are the social accounts people engage with most? We've got the startup folks, Paul Graham. We've got hidden gems like Steve Shoger and Josh Pigford. These are all bootstrappers, startup founders, websites they visit most, dev.to. These are software developers, Hacker Noon. I'm already getting an idea of the types of topics that I may want to, start thinking about. And you can even, this is with the free account, but if I wanted to upgrade, I could also see what podcasts they listen to and what YouTube channels they subscribe to. So this is all really helpful information about your audience. You might also say, well, I don't have my own audience, but I want to, I want to have an audience like, let's see if Marie Poulin, I think I'm spelling that name right. Let's see, better double check here. Marie Poulin, yeah. So, here's she's also a software person, but what social accounts they follow most? Notion is number one, and that's a topic that Marie podcasts about and does YouTube videos about. So you might say, okay, if I want an audience like Marie, or I like Marie's audience, what kinds of topics should I talk about? Well, you can look that stuff up here as well, and talk about those things. Answer the Public is also a great resource. It's typically used for search engine optimization, but for podcasters, there's lots and lots of opportunities here. So this is an easy one, but what are people asking about crypto? So let's see all of the questions related to crypto. How does crypto work? How does crypto mining work? How does crypto staking work? So you get all of these questions. And if you had a crypto podcast, these are topics for your show right here. They're telling you what to talk about. Can crypto make you rich? That would be a great podcast episode title, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then maybe I'll just highlight one or two more. I already mentioned r/podcast. There's also on Reddit a subreddit for podcasters and podcasting. And these can also be really great resources. And then Podyssey, I think, is this, it's not super well known, but in terms of passionate podcast fans, this is where you're going to find them. And people are recommending episodes. So look at what they're saying. In this case, Alice is saying amazing inspirational episode. So she wants episodes that are inspirational. I loved how Shelly stayed true to her goals and plans. So this is like, you can get a sense for what causes people to recommend a show. What are the emotional touchstones in an episode that make people go, you know what, I'm going to take the time to go to this app and recommend the episode. Another one is podchaser.com. Same thing, people recommending episodes. What causes people to recommend episodes? What are the types of shows that people just love? You're Wrong About is a great example about this. Like, let's take stories from the 90s and the 2000s that we all thought we were right about, news stories, and then let's have the counter narrative. Like, you thought you knew what was going on, but I'm going to reveal that you actually didn't know what was going on. People seem to love those types of shows. And you could do a similar show, not an exact copy, but with those similar dynamics.
Amazing. All right. So you have a bunch of audience research. You're developing an idea. You've delved even further into industry and topical research. You have a landing page. Perhaps you've put up a trailer and a teaser. Have seems like you have some connections going on to listening apps, perhaps through Transistor. Yep. What's next in your pipeline for your workflow or your process at that point? What are you thinking about? What are your next steps to approaching producing a show?
Yeah. So in terms of, the first thing is the trailer development, I think would be one. And so here, maybe I'll show you my Descript screen here.
Cool.
Actually, I'll even show my entire screen. I'll take a risk here. So this is Descript right here. And so let's say that you're starting a show with a co-host. I would record it. In this case, we recorded it outside of Descript. I just dragged the files into Descript, and then it automatically, here's me talking, here's Joshua talking, and now I can, and we've recorded something, and that's the first step, right? Just record something, and you'll likely throw it away, but that's okay. You've recorded something. But out of that something, you might be able to pull together a trailer. And, the trailer could just be like a really interesting anecdote. So, maybe this is it here. Josh was telling a story and about a startup he worked at. So I could just say, you know what, this is going to be my trailer. So I clip it to a new composition, and I'm just going to call this trailer. And now I've got, this is how long is this clip? Just over a minute. This alone would be a fine trailer, right? Maybe I want to add a little something to it at first. So I could just like record some audio, say, hey, everybody, here's a show that I recorded with my friend Josh. It is coming soon to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. If you're interested, it would mean the world to me if you subscribed and told a friend. So there's the intro, and then I've got a little clip, and then maybe I just end it with one more little outro, right? So that gives you a taste of what we're going to be talking about. Again, please subscribe in your favorite podcast app and tell a friend. So in a few seconds here, I've created a podcast trailer. the nice thing about Descript is I can edit these visually. So if I want to take out this I can do that. I could even, with the tools here, I can remove all filler words if I wanted to. So I can just like apply to all, remove all of those filler words. So now all of my uhs and spaces are done, and I can play this back. And that's how I would start, because you need to get something out there that the audience can interact with. And if you can't get any sort of interest in the trailer, that's probably your sign that you need to keep working with the concept or choose a different concept. Again, the most potent time to like build anticipation is before you've really released your first episode. The trailer should serve that purpose of kind of the litmus test for whether or not, there's enough here. And yeah, I would publish this. You can, export it as an MP3, or you can publish it directly to Transistor or wherever you host your podcast. And that whole process doesn't have to take a long time. You can just choose your show, and then publish it, and then put it out there and see what people say, right?
Awesome.
After that, once you've gotten some feedback, once you've gotten people on your email list and you're like, hey, what did you like about the trailer? Where would you like us to take the show? Then, start recording your episodes based on the information you have, like based on what you think the audience wants. You're always kind of guessing, right? You're guessing, what does the audience want here? Like, what are they interested in hearing? And then based on that, create your show. In Descript, you can also add audio files. Let's see if I've got one here to give you an example. So I've got little audio intro music here, and you can add that on top. So it's kind of like if you've ever used a nonlinear editor, Descript is like a mashup between Microsoft Word and Google Word, and a nonlinear editor that you might use like GarageBand. And so, I can take this audio clip and I can move it back and forth. I could add a fade in and a fade out if I wanted to. So it's not just the ability to edit, the text and the audio and all that stuff visually, which you can do here, but it's also, you can add in other clips. So I would start editing your show based on the feedback you've gotten. Feel free to, use different clips from different places if you want, refer to things you're interested in. Bring clips from past episodes. I transcribe almost every episode in Descript, and then I'm often using it as a search engine, to say like, how many times, where did I talk about startups? And then it'll just bring me right to that. It'll bring me right to that spot where I talked about startups, right? And I can use that clip in other episodes. And maybe one more thing while I'm here. You've got this trailer episode, which you've hopefully uploaded to, again, Transistor or wherever you host your podcast. But the other thing is you want to promote your show on social media, and you can do that as well with Descript. You can create these audiograms. And so I've got this automatic, clip here, this little video clip that gets generated that I can now post to Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and promote the show there with a link for people to go to my landing page and sign up for the email list, or better yet, go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google Podcasts and subscribe in their player so that when I'm ready to launch that first episode, they're already subscribed. They'll see it drop as soon as I publish it. So having all of this in one place, being able to, create these little promo clips and things, that's why this workflow to me changed my life. Once I was like, oh my God, I can do all this in Descript, instantly export it to Transistor, and then publish it, and dramatically reduce the amount of editing I have, but then also create these marketing assets like an audiogram, and then also trailers are big now. I mean, transcripts are big, so you can export the subtitles and upload those to your podcasting host if they have them. So you can kind of do it all in one place. Which makes this whole workflow really powerful.
Cool. So to wrap that up for folks, you've held an interview conversation, you've uploaded that, done some editing real quickly, threw in an intro and an outro, maybe some music, and you're off to publish to promote your upcoming show. And as simple as that.
Yeah, exactly. And you might have to do that multiple times, right? Like you might have to, you might have to publish that that audiogram a few times. By the way, did you see me do the audiogram? I just realized I wasn't sharing my. Was I sharing my screen then? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah. The one of the people you should all follow is I'm going to mess up the pronunciation of his name, but Jack Rhysider or Jack Rhysider. Let me see if I can find his. But he does the Darknet Diaries. So let me show. I'll show you his Twitter here. Oh, there you go. You guys are helping me out here. So Jack Rhysider, I believe, he is sharing everything he's learned about creating Darknet Diaries, and you'll often see him in the Reddit subreddits, and he's published, I believe it is, if you go to his site, and I believe he shares how he's created all of his stuff. So he shares his stats. So if you are like interested in kind of having a case study on someone he systematically built up his audience as an independent podcast producer, he's a great example of that, and a good case study to follow. It takes time. It's like every day you kind of get up and you just push the art forward a little bit that day. So don't get discouraged in the beginning. The reason it's easier for Conan O'Brien to launch a podcast and make it successful is he's been building that audience since the 80s, right? Every day he got up and he was doing a show on TV every day for decades. In the same way, it may take you a while. I started blogging in 2008. I started podcasting in 2012. It takes time to build up an audience, but every day you just get up and you just, push the rock a little bit further. And eventually the accumulation of all those activities, the research, engaging, like you get 2 people subscribe to your newsletter, or you get 2 people following you on Twitter, or you get 3 listeners that are reaching out after every show. As soon as you have that, now you've got something, and now you can try to find other people like them. And the way to do that is to keep figuring out what they find compelling, keep making your show better, keep improving your microphone technique, keep improving, the show, making it, cut out all of those uhs and spaces and, cut that all out. And have these prompts. So have these prompts for people to share the show. Hey folks, Justin here. I just got to tell you that the way people find out about the show almost exclusively is when they tell a friend. So if you've got a friend that you can think of right now that you think would like the show in your podcast app, just click that share button and send it to them in a text message. That would mean the world to me. Thanks. Like it can be just that. And those continuous prompts, if your show is good, people will start sharing your show, and then you'll build momentum, and then it might take a while, but then you continue to go, and then you can hopefully build an audience for your show. And by the way, also have reasonable expectations about the numbers. if I mean, this is kind of cliche, but people will say, if you walked into a room and there was 20 people that wanted to hear you speak, I think most people would be delighted. If you walked into a room and 50 people wanted to hear you speak, that's, you might even be a bit intimidated. And if 100 or 500 people wanted to hear you speak, that's a big crowd. So if you're getting 100 downloads an episode, that's not a failure. That's incredible that you, a person on the internet, could reach out from wherever you are in the world and connect with another human being somewhere else in the world using audio. That alone is incredible, and you should be proud of it. That's awesome. So, and do it for the love for a long, long time, and then worry about money later.
Love it. Speaking of audience, we're gonna open up some questions from our audience here. Reminder to folks, keep coming in through the chat and let us know if there are questions we can answer. But Frederick is asking, should I be creating a YouTube video that then also becomes a podcast, or go audio only? This is the age-old question of repurposing, doubling content, choosing one or the other. Yeah. What do you think about that, Justin?
This is my advice. And it, of course, for some people, they should not listen to this, but if you're good on video, then do video. And you can also record that and edit that in Descript. What I would do is, once you have it pulled into Descript, just publish certain clips on YouTube. So take the juiciest bits, take the bits that are going to generate the most discussion, take the parts that are going to be best for promo, and make those into clips and publish those, not just on YouTube, publish them on Instagram and Twitter and wherever you're active. And that can be a great effect. And then basically have a call to action in the YouTube description, and then also in the video to say, hey, if you're enjoying this clip, head over and listen to the whole thing on the audio podcast. So don't try to get people to watch the whole your 1 hour podcast on video. And some people, again, maybe shouldn't follow this advice. For some audiences, that 1 hour video might be great. But most of what I've seen in terms of success on Transistor, the people having success with video are publishing clips and using those to engage an audience. If they're on TikTok or something, and then say, hey, if you enjoyed this, please subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app. So yeah, definitely do video. I actually like video even better than those audiograms I showed you. So I'll pull the video into Descript, transcribe it, and then I'll remember I know I talked about this one thing. So then I use the search functionality to find that one clip, highlight it, export it as a video, and then upload it to all the places.
Very cool. Very cool. Let's check out another question. I thought about putting 7 solo episodes out there and use these episodes as an example for the guests I want to invite, because no one knows it yet. What do you think about this as strategy from Basma?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that could be good. It could work well. Getting guests the initial time can be tricky. Another trick I used is, so I'm building anticipation for the show, my first podcast. And I had a little bit of a following on Twitter and a little bit of following on my email newsletter. And so I just emailed them and tweeted them and said, hey, I'm starting a podcast. Who would you most like to hear from on my show? And then I allowed them to respond. Then I took those responses, I screenshotted the responses, and I sent those to the guests and said, hey, you don't know me, but you were one of the most requested people that I speak to on my podcast. Here's what people said. And that was a great way to get guests initially when I didn't have a track record. So yeah, whatever it takes to get people, to pique their interest. I think being involved in a community with an audience way before you launch the show really helps. It's one of those things that, you'll have those connections. You'll have that network of people Maybe people are already familiar with your story or what you're trying to do, or they've seen other projects you've done. For me personally, I'm much more likely to be a guest on a show when they're already kind of in the mix. I've seen them in other places on forums or on Twitter, and I'll be, oh yeah, I know you. I see what you're doing. Yeah, I'd be happy to go on your show. So those two techniques I think can be helpful for getting your first guests.
Certainly, love it. We have one from Reed. How do you feel about social audio apps like Clubhouse?
I hate
or Spaces?
No, I think they're great. I mean, they're definitely not as we saw quite a frothy kind of situation, right? Like for a while, it felt like Clubhouse was going to take over the world, and LinkedIn was building a Clubhouse thing, and VCs were investing in other Clubhouse alternatives. But I think they've just become another channel, just like this. Like right now, we're doing a live video thing, and this has existed forever. I remember going live on Periscope, and it essentially being very much like a Clubhouse. Like you could add people as guests. So this dynamic's been around for quite a while, and I think it's great. I don't think they're going to take away from podcasting. To be honest, podcasting has always kind of resisted these, these like frothy, like we're going to grow at 300% every year. Podcasting has grown like in terms of listenership, like 10 to 15% a year for a decade. It's just like slow and steady. And, we just crossed over a few years ago, 51% of Americans listen to a podcast regularly, which I think means once a month. So it's just like this gradual growth. And it's what I like about podcasting. Podcasting is mindful media. It's slow. It is resistant to some of the effects that the negative effects that we see in social media. It's just a very, very different medium. And I continue to hear, just when I'm on the chairlift snowboarding or I'm in the coffee shop, and people say, "Hey, what do you do?" And I say, "Oh, I'm in podcasting." 5 years ago, people were like, "I don't know what that is." And more often than not, now the response is podcasts. Oh, I love podcasts. I just got into podcasts. My cousin told me about the show, and then I checked it out. And so I don't think it'll take away from podcasting. If anything, it'll be additive to it. And you see with Twitter Spaces now, they're allowing you to record those conversations. Eventually, I think the practice will be similar to what we're doing here. You will record something live, but then you will have the recorded version, and then you can take clips from that, and then you can edit it down. And, so yeah, if anything, it'll be additive.
Yeah. What do you think some of these companies can do to further democratize podcasting, right? Like we started off talking about the barrier of entry being so low these days, but there's also like an industry, a thriving industry that we're seeing grow. What do you think can happen at an industry level to further that?
I don't think you want to open up this box.
Just the wrapper, just the first layer of wrapping.
I mean, I believe that the democratizing force in podcasting is RSS. RSS is this old protocol that's been around for a long time that says when you start a podcast on Transistor or Anchor or any of the other places, you get an RSS feed and you control it. You decide where to submit it, whether you want to submit it to Spotify or not, whether you wanted to submit it to Apple Podcasts or not, whether you want to just have people add it to their own device manually. If you decide to leave a podcast hosting provider, you can forward that RSS feed somewhere else and bring your audience with you. And it also, because it's distributed, there's no big corporation that owns podcasting. There's a balance of power because the RSS feed means not only can I submit it to Spotify, but I can also submit it to Apple, also Amazon, and also Google. And so all of these mega corporations who would love to own podcasting. It's much more difficult. And for creators, in the short term, I think centralized platforms like TikTok or YouTube can be attractive. But in the long term, if you want optionality, technology like RSS gives creators way more optionality.
Mm-hmm.
And if you wanted to add a private podcast feed that's paid, you can do that with RSS. And you can tell your public podcast subscribers, hey, if you want to support this show, we have a private podcast feed here. You can go and pay for that either on Patreon, or you can do it on Transistor. There's lots of ways of doing these things. And so I think that's the key is I'm a big defender of RSS. In the same way that, we've seen a lot of creators go back to email newsletters. Again, this old kind of messy technology, but nobody owns email. And it gives you way more optionality as a creator when you're not beholden to just one company for your audience and for your monetization if you're at that point. So the key is to continue to invest in RSS and make it better. The key is to continue to understand, because when I started, I think I would have been way more inclined to say, oh, I just want one platform I can upload everything to. Just give me all of the stats that a centralized platform can give you. But now that I'm an old person on the internet, I just see that as the decades have elapsed, the creators that do the best are the ones who have the most optionality, and almost exclusively, those folks are people who have a blog, an RSS feed, a podcast, an email newsletter list, and their own website. And that's going to be the best for podcast creators in the long run. Lots of problems with RSS, lots of messiness, but the mess is a beautiful mess because it means we're not beholden to just one company.
Love it. So cool. Thanks, man. Let's bring in another great question. Does using a hosting service help with an increase in downloads, listen, visibility in any capacity, as opposed to a free service like Anchor?
Not really. No. So, I actually encourage people to try Anchor all the time, or SoundCloud, or if you want to just get started, feel free to use any of those. You can always, most of people upgrade to a paid hosting provider to get better stats, to get better customer service, to get a better built-in podcast website, a better embeddable player. We do dynamic audio insertion, private podcasts. So people upgrade for those pro tools. But if you're just getting started, there's no reason to not start free. And anybody that says they're really going to help you grow your show is not being truthful. Really growing your show is up to you. You've got to understand your audience better than anybody else. You've got to go to where they're at, where they hang out, and find appropriate ways to attract listeners to your show. And it's hard work, it's a grind, but if you do it over a long period of time, it's additive, it's cumulative. It grows gradually, and to the point where in a few years you might have built up a couple hundred listeners or a couple thousand listeners. So if you're just getting started, just start, publish a show, and then do the hard work of figuring out how you're going to build your audience. And it really is this journey that you're going on, where every day you wake up and you're like, okay, how can I connect with these people in meaningful ways? And not just to get more listens for my show. It can't just be focused on you. It has to be focused on them. How does it make their life better? Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, man, I just want to listen to a show so that podcaster feels better. They're listening to the show for them. There's all these magic words. Alan Clement has this great book called When Coffee and Kale Compete. And in business, we call this the jobs to be done framework. It's worth looking up. But, there's these magic words people use, like give me, help me, free me, make the takeaway, equip me. So for example, like take away the frustration of me having to do all this crypto research myself. Like that's what you're doing. That's how you're helping the audience. There's got to be this strong, compelling reason for people to listen, right? And maybe it's just distract me from how boring this drive is, every day, right? That could be a reason. And so, then you're just trying to entertain people and distract them from their drive. But if you know that one of the primary reasons they're listening is because they're bored on the commute, then you can start to use that. Like you can go, hey, I know you're in that car and I know you're frustrated. And I just want you to know that I hear you. And here's a funny story to help you pass the time, right? Like use that for, to your advantage to create stuff that people want to listen to.
Yeah. So great. So great. I want to take one more question from the audience, and I have a couple questions about you, what you've been listening to and whatnot. We have one from Jennifer here. How to get out of a plateau of a successful podcast. Downloads are not growing at a steady rate for a while.
Sure. Okay.
Big old question. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me show you the stats for the show that John and I do together. So I'll open up the box here because there's a few answers to this.
Cool.
So if you look at our stats here and you look at the listener trends, you can see there's a clear buildup and then a clear kind of slowdown. And there's multiple reasons for this. One, this show was the story of John and I building a company from nothing. And so way back here, we're saying, hey, folks, it's John, Justin, and we're on this journey. We don't know where it's going to end up. We're starting this company from zero, and we want you to join us on the journey. That's a pretty compelling storyline right there, right? People want to see what happens. And you can see as it kind of builds up, and right around here where we have our most listens outside of this anomaly here, this is when we both went full time on Transistor. We did the thing that we set out to do. And really the most interesting arc is here, going from zero to having your own company, and you quit your day job and now it's your full-time thing, right? That's the arc. And so some shows just do have a natural beginning and then kind of a slow drop off. We're also not publishing as frequently. Here we were publishing weekly, and here it might be every 1 or 2 months. So I think sometimes it's looking at your show and go, you know what? Not every show has to last forever. And, sometimes the natural arc of the show is already kind of passed. And if I'm going to do something else, I have to figure out another compelling reason, another compelling story to tell that will get people interested. The other thing you can do is you can look at your stats and you can go, what are some ways we could grow the show? So what happened between here and here? Well, if we sort by most popular, this interview with Taylor Otwell was by far our most popular episode, and it introduced a bunch of new people to our show. We didn't keep them all, but a lot of people stuck around. And so look at the things that are already working. In our case, having a high-profile guest was a good way to grow listenership. Also, like specific topics might really resonate with the audience, and you might see growth around those shows. What shows are people sharing frequently? So look for all these touchstones in your podcast history to try to figure out, what's worked in the past and what could I maybe leverage that would increase listens. Some audiences also just have a natural ceiling. So this show is called Build Your SaaS, which is software as a service. And, our average listenership in the first 30 days is about 2,800 people. And the most popular show in this genre maybe has, I don't know, 10,000 downloads per episode. But that's the ceiling. And it's unlikely that you're going to grow beyond your category's natural ceiling. So if you have a very niche show on a very niche topic, it might be just you've hit as many people as you're going to get within that category. But yeah, I think there's, depending on the topic and other things, it might just be you need to promote the show more often. You need to learn how to self-promote. Use video clips on social platforms where your audience hangs out. Go and engage with people on Odyssey and Podchaser. Like, go and hang out with your fans, and also remind people to help you. So your listeners that are already bought in, hey folks, the show is kind of flattened out. I'm just gonna be honest, the show's flattened out, and I would love for the show to reach more people. Could you do me a favor right now? Let's do an experiment. If everybody who's listening to this just shares this episode right now, like, don't wait till the end of the episode, shares it with a friend via text message. I just want to see if listens increase next month, and I'll report back. So make them your partner when you're, and then you can compare, like, you can compare, like, how does this episode compare to that one where we talked about this, right? Mm-hmm. Or how does this episode compare? This is the episode where I asked people to share the episode with their friends, and here's the episode where the next episode. Well, it worked, right? So try those experiments and see what works, and just keep trying experiments until you find something that works. I would say that buying listeners and buying subscribers is probably not the best tactic. And I see it all the time on Reddit. A tactic that does work is find shows that have dynamic audio insertion and do podcast promo swaps. So say, hey, you've got an audience about the same size as mine, and I think your audience overlaps with mine. Why don't we each add, so dynamic audio insertion would be like automatically add a 30-second clip at the beginning or the middle or the end, and just do it for all of your back catalog. So you do that for somebody else and they do it for you. Those can be very effective because they're already listening. You're reaching people where they're at. So they already like murder shows. They only like murder shows. And if you have a murder show, if you cross promote with somebody else who has a murder show, you might be able to attract a bigger audience.
So cool. All right. We have 2 minutes left of our time today. I want to do a lightning round and give some calls to action at the end here. Keep folks engaged. I want to learn a little bit more about you and share that with the audience here. So let's fire through these. Okay. What shows are you listening to right now, and what's keeping you listening to them?
Oh wow. I listen to lots of shows in the bootstrapper space. So other people starting software companies like mine. The kind of original show in this genre is Bootstrapped Web, which I really like. The show that made me want to become a podcaster was probably Dignation originally, Strapper show called Startups for the Rest of Us, and Mark Maron. I always loved Mark Maron. I actually only listen to Mark now for his monologues. I've found tons of really good shows through Podyssey. So often when I want something interesting, I'll go to there. And if you haven't listened to The Crypto Queen, if you haven't listened to The Jungle Prince, I think it's called, and Radiotopia they're just amazing storytellers, and you can learn a lot. And the shows are often just a compelling stories told very well. I really like those. So those would be a few.
Cool. Are there any new audio makers that you're especially excited about? Do you have any young producers, young hosts, podcasters that you're listening to?
Oh,
and liking?
yeah. Yeah. I really like in the bootstrapper space, there's a podcast called Software Social with Michelle and Colleen. And our industry is pretty, there's a lot of men on mics, and just hearing them discuss starting a business, it's just a completely different tone and a needed tone. It's a really, really wonderful show. And they're they're just so encouraging to each other and to their listeners. So I would say if you're building a business or a software business, Software Social is awesome. And I'll leave it at that. I think that's a good one.
Cool. I think that about wraps it, Justin. This has been awesome. Thanks so much for joining. All the folks that were able to attend today, check out the recording at youtube.com/Descript, or I saw in the chat the kind of back and forth between Descript or Descript. We'll leave it up to you.
Oh yeah, we were supposed to have that debate right away.
Oh, there it is. Descript comes out with 55%.
So what did I say Descript or did I say Descript?
I go back and
Descript.
forth. I work at Descript, and I go back and forth.
Well, apparently there's no wrong answer. It's pretty even.
Well, thanks everybody. Check out the recording, and go to descript.com, and you can go to help.descript.com for live support and help, and just to learn more about the app. And if you want to see something that you don't see in the app currently, go to feedback.descript.com and let us know. Cool. Oh, check out the Discord as well. Such a vibrant, awesome community there. But thank you, Justin. It's been awesome learning more about you and hearing about your career and work.
Yeah, this was really fun. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for everyone who showed up. It means a lot to see all these people in chat and asking questions, and that means a lot to me. Thanks for being here.
Totally. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.